Hey everyone, welcome back to Haley on the Go. I'm Haley. We have new episodes every Thursday, so make sure to subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast to never miss a conversation like the one we're having today. I am so honored to bring this really important talk to you guys today. Today, we're welcoming an actor to the pod who you might know from his roles in Rise of Lakers Dynasty, Animal Kingdom, Jeffrey Dahmer the Story, but you're going to leave here today knowing him as an incredible activist, human of immense resilience, and an author. Blake Cooper Griffin, thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Haley, for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm really excited to get to share your story with everyone. I know you are currently in the process of sharing it out with the world through your first book, but I want to start us at the beginning and your childhood. You grew up in a conservative town in South Carolina. What was that like for you initially when you were going through self discovery and your identity?
Well, first of all, I love being from South Carolina. South Carolina is a great place. I did live in several different while I grew up, we moved quite a bit, lived in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. But in the book, I do talk about, um, an immense amount of bullying that took place. And, as I came to understand my sexual orientation, and other people came to understand it in their own way, there was a lot of bullying. And in the book, in my book, The Story of You, A Life Rewritten, I talk a lot about how that bullying was the initial experience that made me realize that this was going to be a road for me, that I would need to muster resilience. And I talk a lot in the book about how, for me, using the tool of story, zooming out, and and seeing my life as a story that I could rewrite gave me the courage, it gave me the ability to take action, and it gave me a chance to reclaim my own narrative. And I think in chapter one, you get you get that first dose of a very tough experience, being bullied in the classroom, in front of 30 kids, being called a slur, and how that was really the impetus for me rewriting my story.
Mm. I love the title of your book and rewriting your story. You are a survivor of conversion therapy, something you were forced to undergo, and you are sadly far from being alone in that experience. Over 700,000 adults in the US have gone through that, 350,000 minors. It's something that's illegal now in 27 states because of how disproven its tactics ever were and how cruel it
Mhm.
is. Before we dive in, can you explain a little bit about what conversion therapy is?
So, conversion therapy is a practice that seeks to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. As you said, it is wildly discredited, it is harmful. It is and it is illegal and banned in many states, but not all states. And it is currently in front of the Supreme Court,
Yes.
as to whether or not those bans will continue.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court just heard a case this cycle or this session of theirs around the ban in Colorado and how it is banned for minors, and it is expected to rule in the summer of 2026 on this. So this is a really timely and unfortunately topical conversation, something that should have been never done but sunset so long ago. What how was that brought up to you? How was it told to you that that was something you're going to experience? Was it?
Right. So, as I talk about in the book, I was outed. So I did not
Mm,
choose to come out. I was at a summer program. I was 17, and as you'll read in the book, I was outed. So from there, my parents, who are wonderful people, really, and I'm very lucky that we have such a great relationship, and they are so on my side. Um, but they were scared too when I was
yeah.
outed. And that's the thing about conversion therapy, is that it was introduced to my parents as something that could fix the situation.
Mm,
Because we've got to think back, right? this took place in the early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
There was no gay marriage. Matthew Shepard had just been killed years before, right? There was on the news even, there's no gay adoption was very rare, right? So on the news, the life of a gay person was at best one of survival. And that was what my parents were um, you know, that was from their point of view, they thought it needed to be fixed, right? And so one of the things I want to make sure is clear in this book is that, you know, conversion therapy doesn't work, it hurts, and it drives families apart,
Yeah.
right? So when I was in one of my most vulnerable moments, being outed at 17, and my parents were at one of their most vulnerable moments, not knowing what to do. And trust me, if they could do it again, they wouldn't, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
But they did. But a conversion therapist is basically committing fraud by taking money from people in their, most vulnerable time. And so it was brought to me as something that, my parents wanted me to try, and it had been encouraged by another family member. And at the time, I just wanted, I didn't really have much choice in the matter. I'm 17, so I went along with it. And look, it had consequences for sure.
I like that you're able first of all, I'm sorry that this was your experience, and it's beautiful that you are able to have such a great relationship with your family, and I think it's really important to point out that so many people and parents and family members come from a a good place and are misinformed or were misinformed, but now we have so much more information, and these tactics should not ever be used today. Tell us a little bit about your experience with conversion therapy. I know you probably write about it a lot in the book for everyone to read, but how that was for you.
Sure, and I think it's an important question actually, Haley, because there are many different
Yes.
styles to this, right? There are some that are more invasive, some that are more like talk therapy. Mine was a more talk therapy style conversion therapy. And, as I write about, I was at an arts boarding school for my senior year of high school. And so I would take calls with the conversion therapist from campus. And what's interesting about it is the shame that's associated with even doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm this kid and I'm like trying to stay tough and um, trying to navigate this, but I didn't even tell my friends about it at the
Yeah.
time because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was going through it, and then we did these phone sessions, and then we ultimately did a group family session where it was very dramatic. That He like shut down the back of a restaurant, and then we all went in. I mean, it was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
we were there for hours, and that was, so mine was that sort of talk therapy style. There are some that are more like going to a camp, you know. Um, Regardless, though, I keep harking on it. It doesn't work.
No.
And so it's a, and not that even, I don't think that sexual orientation or gender identity is something to be changed anyway.
No.
But what I'm saying is it's a fraudulent practice
Yes.
that is dangerous. And if you pull the numbers on it, um, you know, LGBTQ youth who have experienced conversion therapy are 2 times more likely to think about suicide or commit suicide,
And to
right?
live a full
Um,
life with suicidal ideation, I saw the number was like 75%.
the trauma involved, right? The
Yeah.
there are studies that link it to PTSD, 6 times more likely to experience depression, linking it to anxiety. And here's a fascinating figure. The Trevor Project did a fascinating study where they figured out the financial cost of conversion therapy to the US economy. And when they looked at all of the negative um, fallout from conversion therapy, it totaled to $9 billion in loss a year in the United States. So I would hope that the fact that it harms minors and the fact that it breaks up families would be enough for us to say, we've got to protect people. But if you need one more thing, it's also financially devastating, has financially devastating consequences. And I even looked on per person that has gone through conversion therapy. I don't have the exact number in my mind, but it's somewhere around approximately $83,000 of fallout due mainly to therapy that's needed after,
Yeah.
and depression and anxiety, right? That doesn't even, I think, account to productivity cost, right, of those people that go through it. So, you're talking about also disadvantaging those people economically later in their life.
It's interesting because that is a very common through line with any hateful policies in the United States, whether it's racist policies, homophobic policies, anti choice policies. They all have this incredible economic impact and societal impact. And it shows that they are really just rooted in this sort of hate element. And so, thank you for bringing those numbers up. You mentioned that, the shame being associated with being in conversion therapy was so deep. After you were 17, you grew up to be this very successful actor. You moved out to LA. What was that journey for you like, coming from that point in your life to building the courage and the resilience to kind of go out there and be who you are?
You know, I feel incredibly grateful, to be honest. I feel I almost, I'm I almost get choked up thinking about it because I was as I commit to in the book, I for whatever reason I had God's blessing to be able to have something inside of me that said no. No, I will commit to action, to fight back, right? To fight back against the bullies, not with fist, but with will. And I always say I'd like to not have to do that, but I did learn the skills to do that, and I didn't always trust me. I fell down along the way. I'm not a perfect guy. I definitely I went back in the closet when I got to Hollywood,
Mm.
you know, but I moved out to Los Angeles, and I was lucky enough to get with good representation and started pursuing my dream of becoming an actor. Um, I then though faced challenge in that as well. I talk about in the book that I had representation that was top representation out here that called me in and said, "Look, sorry, we love you, but we didn't know you were gay, and this is very hard to sell."
Wow.
And so they so much as sending me to a consultant to look at how I spoke and what I wore and making sure that I didn't come off as gay when I walked into rooms. And then later, those people dropped me. That was another moment. It was another inflection point for me, but I kept going. And and then, I talk about in the book that I, started seeing some success, and having that success was reaffirming. I'm lucky. It was reaffirming that even though my voice was small and in my head, it was showing up in the world. And I know that that can exist for other people too. I really do. I see it. I own I also own a educational and mentorship company, and I see it in the students that my company works with. In just in like, and they have a goal. A lot of this book is about that. is that each of us have goals. All of us deserve to live up to our own God-given potential. I know that you believe that. I've seen that in the interviews that I've watched, and why you and I both have been involved in, at least I think from what I've seen, have been involved in politics. And, that I honestly, I also talk in the book about how I stole from people that I admired.
Mm.
I stole from those people that I admired when I didn't feel that I was strong enough. I would think of someone that I admired and I would kind of fake it till I made it. Um, so I hope that answers your question about kind of what the journey was like for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love the concept of stealing from people who you admire and kind of using success as courage or seeing other people who have been able to make it to follow in their footsteps. And you're spot on. Definitely got my start in politics and continue to do that. And so I'm excited to get to share your story on my platforms. I think I'd love if you could go a little bit deeper on you got to LA, you were dropped by management, which is horrifying. The consultant story makes me feel sick. Is when
Made
did
me
you?
feel sick too.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
for
Is
years.
when did you start to?
And it was really expensive for a kid who had no money,
It's
to have to go to that,
crazy.
I was putting it all on credit card bills. Yeah.
Truly crazy. Is you mentioned you didn't tell your friends you were in conversion therapy. You came back into the closet when you went to LA. When was a moment for you where you started to feel confident in who you were and being able to be true to who you are? Have you had that moment?
You know, I have. These things come in waves, right? Like, I mean, they build, right? I first got there with my family, and that was the most important for me. You know, and this happened years and years ago, over a decade ago. My family and I got to where we needed to be. Or and we are stronger for it. I am so proud of I also have a wonderful sister who's always just been so supportive of me, but I'm so proud of the relationship that my family has has created really through action, through evolving, right? So that happened first, and then I think having a bit of career success. I did a show. It launched CW's streaming platform Beer Fest, where I played the lead of the show, and he was like a bro, like it was like a bro comedy. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever said this before, but I think it was something like I did exactly what those managers said I wouldn't do,
Yeah.
right? And there's something in that that released me,
Mm,
you know? So I think there was that, and then I think also I got older in life. I got older and I was like, I want to have a life,
yeah.
and like I want to experience going out to dinner and going on a date, like I want to experience those things without feeling like I have to hide them. And so that did something for me, but to be real, this book was a
Mm.
major part of this was me leaping. Chapter 6 is the conversion therapy story. That chapter was never supposed to be in the book. I wrote the book without it in it.
Oh, wow.
Because even up until 2 years ago, when I started this process, many of my close friends had never had the conversation with me that you and I are having,
Oh,
that I had never told them. I felt like doing conversion therapy, even though I was 17 and I didn't choose to do it, made me weak. I really did. I felt like it made me I don't know, it made me flawed, and I had some weird shame around it. And, so I just never really talked about it. And so this book for me and willing to, put it out there, um, is a was a big part is a big part of the process, because what I started to realize is the things that we push down, and really like hide and protect. I mean, everyone has the right to keep their personal life private. That's fine. But I was letting it rule me. because I was always having to edit, you know? And so by telling the story, I'm freeing myself, and I hope that I hope that reaches other people. Certainly, you don't need to write a book. You don't have to write an op-ed about it, but just even if it's like, admitting to yourself, like, this happened, it's a part of my story. And by the way, though, conversion therapy is just a part of my story. It became that once I accepted that it really happened. It is a period in time. It really did happen. I am not defined by it,
No.
right? Other people who have experienced it don't have to be defined by it either. And it can be, I talk about this idea of like your life is sort of a like dominoes, right? And you're riding along this wave. Um, and if you take out though three of the dominoes out of the line, right? Then when you push them down, the other ones don't
Won't
continue
fall.
to fall too,
Yeah.
right? So by putting it back in and saying, look, this happened, and I hope that that counselor, I don't this book, I don't use any names in this book.
Mm.
This is not a retribution
Yeah.
sort of thing. I have no desire for that at all. I hope that that counselor has changed. I hope that my representation from years ago have had a change of heart. I don't think they're terrible people. I look at my own parents. They changed.
Yeah.
So, but I do have to admit to myself that this happened, and I do that so that I can keep moving forward.
I think as much as this book and writing that chapter was a gift to yourself in the sense that you're letting yourself move forward, it is a real gift to the world though, because I feel like there are very few people who share these stories. And the shame that you talk about having is really a shame that should be put on society and not anyone who's gone through this experience for forcing children and adults and anyone to go through something like this and feel like they can't be accepted for who they are. And nobody talks about it in a truthful, honest way, or very few people. And so by putting it out there, I think you're going to make such a huge difference for so many people who need to hear these stories, not just members of the LGBTQ community, but people who love members of that community and who need to
Right.
understand and hear. So really grateful that you're doing that. I know it is just a small part of your story though. And so I want to open it up to you to kind of share some more big moments from your life that you want to make sure people know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the story of you, um, I talk about a lot of things. There's a lot of fun parts to the book. There's a lot of funny parts. I mean, I talk about going to dinner with Doris Roberts, and she tells a hilarious story. Um, I talk about, being on different TV shows and how exciting that was as somebody who wanted to do that with their life and then got the opportunity to. I also talk about working on being a national surrogate for three different presidential
Yes.
campaigns. And I get to talk about that work there, working with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's campaign, and then President Joe Biden, and then Vice President Kamala Harris. And there's a lot of behind the scenes there because I think that it is not a book I want to be clear. It is not a red versus blue book.
No.
I want to talk to anybody who wants to have a conversation. I do, respectfully, right? Um, and I do. I have people in my life who are Republicans, who are um, independents. But I say very bluntly in the book, to be honest with the reader, if I'm going to tell my story, I have to be able to talk about the things that I've been involved in. So I ask readers um, there's no bashing in the book. I ask readers, though, to take that ride with me. And I'm sort of old fashioned, I guess, in the way that I think we can all learn together, regardless of our, political beliefs. But I have to be myself. And so the book isn't about changing your vote. But I do have to talk about, my experiences. So I think you get a whole sort of view, and there's a wonderful story at the end of the book about my mother. I took my mother to the White House Christmas party, and it's just a really special moment at the end of the book. And I think that it was certainly special for my mom and I, and especially in the arc of our story. Um, and I think that readers will really enjoy it.
I love that. And I do think it's important we talk to people, whoever they are. As someone who also worked alongside a few campaigns, um, your story, though, is more
I
important
know.
than
I was looking at your Instagram. You worked at a lot of them.
as someone who, your story, though, is more important than ever because unfortunately, just the freedom to be who you are in this country is really under attack. And so I do want to ask, having worked on the campaigns that you did and using your platform to do that, how have you remained hopeful in the current state of the world?
Hmm. Right. So that's a great question. That's a great question. I remain hopeful because I think it's what's required,
Yeah.
right? I don't remain, I'm not toxically positive, right? Like I'm not just like, no matter what, everything's going to be okay. No, I think there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I think though that what people who want to take control, this book too, right? Politics is about what's the story we want to tell about our country?
Hmm.
What's the story we're investing in, right? So, whether I'm an actor telling the story of a character, or I'm in politics trying to tell the story of the country that I want to live in, right? Um, I think we all have to commit to that story every day. And many of the candidates that I've had the chance to speak for um, have committed to a story that is a story of hope.
Yeah.
The idea that things can change um, is a story of hope. And I know from my life they can, right? Like I see it. Like I am not the kid being called the F word. I am that kid that was called the F word over and over and over again in front of people. I am the kid that went through conversion therapy. I am the guy who got dropped by um, his managers. But I'm also the person that worked on 3 presidential campaigns and, was the lead of 2 network,
Yeah.
shows. And, like, so I think that I remain hopeful because I have seen change happen. I remain hopeful because, again, we were talking about stealing. One of the things I talk about in the book is that at 22, I got commissioned to write a play in in the Hamptons, which was crazy because they like flew me out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I was taking the jitney back, the bus back to the city because they were like flying me home after writing this play. And the play was actually about healthcare. Even then, I was writing about these kind of things. But I went into a bookstore and I picked up Living History by Hillary Clinton. And I knew of her at the time as as first lady, but I was interested in her. That's why I bought the book. And it was actually, I believe, a used copy. So it had like little, somebody else had written in the margins. Um, but I also, and I talk about in the book how she has been a real um, source of energy for me in my life, even before I ever had the opportunity to meet her, and work on the campaign or whatnot. But I talk about how her sort of ability to dare to be first, to dare to make change, that gave me hope. Because
Yeah.
as you said earlier in this interview, when you see other people do things that the system wasn't necessarily built for them to do, it gives you hope. It gives you courage. Um, and I talk about that, and I then asked the reader. I said, "Look, Republican, Democrat, you may have voted for Hillary Clinton or not, but we can certainly take something from all the mountains that she's climbed." And I'm
Absolutely.
hoping that on a much smaller level, people see some of the mountains that I've climbed, and in the story of you, and can apply it to their life. Because while I write about myself in the book, the story of you really is about you, the reader, and how do you reclaim authorship?
I think that is such a beautiful note to kind of wrap up on. Someone much smarter than me has told me, though, that they don't believe in hope, they believe in doing the work, and the work ultimately gives you hope. And I think you kind of summarized that. But I
I
always
like
try
that.
to keep that in mind. It's so great. Little fun tidbit, but which Christmas party did you go to with your mom?
We went to it was for President Biden. It
Okay.
was the Christmas party. What day was it? It was in the evening.
But
I
was
want
it
to say it was
last
like
year?
Friday or Saturday. Yeah, it was last year.
I went to
Yeah,
last year's
right before the
too.
election.
I brought my husband, and he was saying, we'll be the last people to have ever gone to a Christmas party in that East Wing.
Right. Oh, you're right.
Little historical
Wow.
fun fact for us.
That is true. That is true. It was a great time. I mean, it was, and every time I go to the White House, I'm just humbled by the fact that while things are difficult, they really are, and I don't want to minimize that. Um, I love this country.
Yeah.
I really love the United States of America, and I feel blessed to live here, um, and that comes with a responsibility to try to move the dialogue forward and continue to do the work, as you said, so that we can have hope. I'm committed to doing that with, you know, anyone else who also has that kind of, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, has that desire for democracy to prevail.
On that note, Blake of Griffin, thank you for being here. Your book is on sale
Oh,
right
thank
now,
you.
pre-sale right now. So everyone go order it. Make
Yes,
sure you
you
read
can
it.
pre-order.
And thank you for sharing your story with the world. It's so important and it's going to make a huge difference.